Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino here, and I have with me Randall Fox, who is self-admittedly soft-spoken. So this is going to be interesting because I scream and yell with everything I do. But we have an interesting show today. We're going to talk about the arts. Apparently, we're going to talk about DC and being a trauma nurse also, which is an interesting place and an interesting time to do it. So we get a lot to do. So let's hit it. So. We're gonna start in the beginning. So talk a little bit about we were in DC at the same time. DC is an interesting place. I think you probably saw the gentrification is the nicest word to say it. And you were in an area that was being gentrified.
I like to think of revitalization. I mean, DC completely changed. We lived
almost overnight.
Almost overnight. I mean, I lived up on Capitol Hill, up by Eastern Market.
Yep.
It was a place that you did not walk at night.
Yep. And in fact, you were told not to walk. Not like you didn't walk for your own safety. Like the cops would be like, turn away.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember one time we were sitting out and you heard gunshots. You're like, what are you doing out in the yard? Get inside. But DC completely changed from Capitol Hill all the way down to the wharf, down to the river. It was amazing. For sure.
And even up Mount Vernon, that area was another one you didn't walk down. And you had the Shaw District down 9th Street.
Yeah.
Was like it was Howard University, and there was and then all of a sudden that is bumping now.
Yeah. You didn't go there, but I mean, I was there when it was like right before the recession.
Yeah.
So you were looking to buy a place and you're like, oh, you want $200,000 for it? I'll give you $300,000 for it. I remember it was just crazy when the market was there. Yeah. And it just continued to grow. And it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, so I went to University of Maryland College Park, which for those that don't know is like 3 miles from the border of D.C. And now it's changed, but it was the part of D.C. you did not want to be in. The PG County, Southeast D.C. was the area of D.C. like still to this day. It's gotten a much in the Hyatt feel. I couldn't believe what happened when I went there last. But, I think that white flight of the 80s took a really long toll on D.C. New York started their revitalization efforts earlier, and then D.C. went on it. And because the government had gotten so big, it was just like wildfire. And my favorite thing of D.C., though, had to be the 4 p.m. on Thursday happy hour rush, where everyone came with their badges from Capitol Hill like it was an honor to be a freaking intern for one of these state senators. And they would, honestly, why I loved it so much is they partied so hard. I could not believe it. I'm like, guys, it is 3 p.m. You are 6 in the wind, screaming and dancing, and the streets are much better aligned with the metro, so you can start at one place, walk straight up 14th, and have like 20 drinks at different places.
But the thing about it is you would see congressmen, House representatives, you would see all of them out there having a beer.
That changed, not anymore. Yeah. But yes, that was about the end of that era. I think COVID probably forced it even more. But like, it was just because the social media, it also was the rise of social media. You don't want to be caught dead with the wrong person, right? The last thing you need is a super liberal sitting next to someone with a Make America Great hat, where the optics could just be spun a million ways. And then it's a damn shame. But so you were a trauma nurse.
Yeah, I worked at Washington Hospital Center, so I was head of trauma, flight medic. I did that for 20 years.
Wow.
Loved it. Absolutely was a complete passion of mine.
Okay.
My ex and I moved down to Atlanta. Okay. And did a career change from there.
Okay. So flight medic, so talk a little bit about that. We just kind of glossed over it.
Flight medic, so the person who flies into the accidents picks somebody up and needs to transport them back to the hospital. Yeah. So that's what I did.
Helicopter?
Helicopter and fixed wing. So rotor wing and fixed wing. Rotor wing, it's, like again, we would fly into the accidents. It was a pickup, stabilize them, get them to the hospital.
And trauma, at that point, if that's happening, trauma is an understatement.
No, I mean, it was really about stabilizing, but really getting them there. But these were people who needed to be transported quickly. Got it. Or that you were transporting, like Washington Hospital is a level 1 trauma center. Yeah. So it was, depending upon the facility they were going to, maybe it was a burn unit. They had to go to a particular unit. That's where we'd take them. Yeah. I also did fixed wing, and that was long-term transport. Yeah. So that would say
hospital with a specialty or something like that, where they had to get somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was a great passion. I really loved doing it, and I've kept my license. I currently do like natural disasters. I've been to Haiti. I do like hurricanes and things like that. If you have someone needs to go there for 30 days, I can hang out and do that, and then come back to work. What I do.
Yeah, and like, look, this is not a political statement. This is a human being statement. Haiti needs freaking help. They got demolished, like time after time, and again, a lot of this is the way the politics work there, not beneficial to the people. But I mean, between earthquakes and hurricanes, they got demolished.
Well, I mean, Haiti, Turkey. I'm working. You're working in a war zone. Yeah. You're working underneath a tent. You're working in subpar conditions. Yeah. But most people aren't going to go work in those conditions or have the freedom and flexibility to go spend 30, 60, 90 days to do that.
Yeah.
And I got
and you're
lucky.
in triage. Like there's everywhere. You're picking, and it's a priority, and you can't be right, you can't be wrong, but you got to act quick.
Got to act quick. You got to think quick, and you got to be level-headed. Yeah.
My dad was the CEO of Elmhurst Hospital in Queens. Elmhurst Hospital was a level 1 trauma center. It was one of the only ones in the country that to this day will still take. It doesn't matter if you're an illegal immigrant. Doesn't matter if you have insurance. They take everybody, which is still unheard of these days.
And Washington Hospital Center was
and that's what I was going to get to. Those northeastern cities, the certain person that I won't name that deems them sanctuary cities because he's a retard. Oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to say that. Beep that one. Sorry, beep that flounder. I should be allowed to say it, but just beep that one. Those trauma centers exist because it serves the community in which people serve. And if you've ever been to DC and been around the hospital, the area of the people they serve are it's not what you're expecting by being in Falls Church. Let's leave it at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I loved what I did. And I was lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's good for you. So let's fast forward. So that obviously provided you with a good career. You obviously were able to handle adversity. So let's fast forward. So you moved to Atlanta, and we are here to talk about the Atlanta Foundation for Public Spaces.
Yes, sir.
DC does a really good job of public spaces on every quarter. And if you see in DC, there's food kitchens serving people. They are really parts of that moving community. And they're wonderful places and statues and history. And it does so well at that. Now it's the nation's capital. It's expected to be. But even talking like the not paths that people don't walk are still pretty covered with spaces. It looks more like a European city.
Right.
So if you've been to any European city, really, it's public squares everywhere where everyone gets together. That's just where it happens. So talk about when you got to Atlanta, what surprised you the most and made you want to get into something like this?
Well, I'm glad you said that because our name is based on that, public spaces. It was about utilizing public spaces, utilizing places that you wouldn't typically think of to bring people together. Streets, parks, marketplaces. So what we did is I took something I loved, which was Easter Market, world's nation's oldest farmers market. Spent every weekend there. Came to DC or came to Atlanta, it didn't exist. So I said, you know what? I want a career change. I want to try and change some things up. And I said, can I do this? So we started with the Chastain Park Arts Festival. I lived in Chastain. And we started an arts festival. And I said, if I have 75 artists and I can bring the people together, then let's do it. Well, we had 125 artists, so we doubled, and the attendance was off the chain.
And that's a good area to start, right? Because you're reaching the aristocrats of the Chastain area. But just, I'm saying people that, whether they felt the need for art, that's a place where if someone's friends go, they're going to go. And they're going to be involved.
I'll tell you why. I lived in the neighborhood. We lived in the neighborhood. And and one of the reasons why we exist is the fact is that Metro Atlanta has, 5 boroughs, 5 sections. People that live in Metro, or say Marietta, for instance, don't typically want to go to Midtown. People who live in Midtown don't typically want to go to Chastain.
They'll go for a concert. They maybe hop on the train once in their life to go to the airport. But other than that, they're staying in their little community.
Exactly. So living in the neighborhood, they said, hey, we want something like this up in our neighborhood. And that's one of the things I like about Metro Atlanta is we have all these different pockets. Virginia Highlands is different than even North Druid Hills, which is right next to each other.
Decatur's right there, completely different world.
Exactly. So that's how that's the name, Public Spaces. That's how it came together, and that's how we came together as a group.
Yeah. So again, broad stroke, right? Public spaces can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but I think immediately, my mother was born in Florence. I spent a lot of time in Europe, and there's a public space, there's a square everywhere. And I feel like one of the things as Americans, it made it look, when I was young, because those public spaces didn't exist, me and my buddies were always trying to find places to hang out, like the mall or something like that. It was all centered around capitalism, as opposed to Europe, where all ages would be sitting in a park playing chess and just kind of sitting out.
Well, but you hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about DC, New York, and Europe. Everybody walks. We all walk. You walked everywhere you went. You were out in public spaces. You walked, you took a cab, or you took a bus. Here, we drive, but we still like to get out. The one thing that we do on the weekends is we like to get out and we like to be amongst other people.
So the belt line is what it is. I mean, because you're driving everywhere. When you get on that belt line, you can walk place to place. People go for hours. So, and again, that's changed, right? So you said you moved, when did you move?
We moved here in 2000, I think. 2000. I've been here 20 years.
2000. So wonderful. So obviously you were in DC. We talked about monumental change. Well, Atlanta probably was a decade behind when it started. But talk about what you've seen in Atlanta. Talk about the change you've seen here.
The thing about Atlanta is it continues to grow. I think it's like number 6 in the housing market now. I mean, it's constantly growing. I was looking at the stats the other day. There's almost 7 million people that live here.
And we passed some of those bigger hubs. We passed DC, we passed Philly in population size. I mean, this is one of the 6 or 7, depending on who you read, largest metro area in the country.
Well, the population went up by almost 2% last year.
Yeah.
So, it's constantly growing. And the thing is that people like to get out. So again, it's full circle. It's constantly growing. Again, I was lucky to live in Chastain. I've moved over to the Oak Grove area. That area is completely changing. And it's nice to see that we are really becoming a city again.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming in town.
Yeah. Yeah, which is bucking the trend in a lot of cities. Their COVID really forced a lot of people, because they didn't have to come into the city to work, to leave those cities again. So it is nice to see it. And I don't live far. I live by North Lake, so I'm still in town. I got the best of both worlds. We bought during COVID when everyone said we were crazy, but somehow I found a nice big house on a ½ acre with trees that are 100 years old, so it feels like you're in the middle of the woods, but I'm 6 miles from downtown. So I get to see the best of all worlds.
I'm not far from you. I'm actually on Lakeside High School, close to that.
Oh, I'm right there. Yeah, I live off Cravey, right by Lakeside, so I'm right there.
So you've seen even how that neighborhood's just changed in the last few years.
Those areas are really hard, because you want change, because look, the shopping centers are run down, but what happened at Claremont is a great example on 85. I mean, they gutted everything, and what did they put? A gigantic apartment complex with a chain restaurant. That's a little depressing also.
I like it because you got to remember what was there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. My kids go to school at the Annunciation Day School at Immaculate Heart of Mary. I pass it every day.
Every day. So right across the street, all of that's coming down as well, and it's gonna be a carbon copy.
Yeah. I probably liked it because Popeyes was there, and I got to stop and get a chicken sandwich every once in a while. That might be it.
I'm all right. I'm with you on that one.
But you're talking about the post office, which was the worst post office in the world.
I love that post office.
But bench warmers, they're talking about that stuff, which it desperately needed change. I just think what they did in Toco Hills is a good example. It's a nice place. It's got good stores. It needed the change, but putting those mega apartments up on such a big, crowded intersection is going to screw a lot of people's days up.
Oh, I mean, I avoid the intersection.
Yeah.
Coming down off that exit, you can completely avoid it. But look at the growth at Shaliford and Briarcliff. What's going on there? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Atlanta's growing.
Yeah.
It's not slowing down. Atlanta's continuing growing, and people are coming in town.
Yeah. Which makes public spaces that much more important, and we will get to that. So you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with Randall Fox, Atlanta Foundation for Public Spaces. And I think we did a good job setting up the gentrification, setting up why these public spaces need to exist. So let's get into the nuance of it. You guys got a lot of different festivals and events and stuff going on. So give us a 30,000-foot view of some of the different things and how you spread from that one in Chastain to so many different ones.
Well, I think we've got about 18, if I'm not correct, 18. And what we do is we really concentrate on the different demographics in the different neighborhoods. As we talked about earlier, we're down in Olmsted, Linear Parks, which is kind of the Midtown area. Yep. We're Piedmont Park, which is a great park to be in. We're kind of in different pockets because what we've learned is being in Atlanta, everyone likes to stay in their pocket.
Yeah.
So that has worked well for us, and we find that with that, the neighborhoods and the communities come in, and they actually kind of get to own that event. Yeah. That's about them.
Yeah, and I would imagine if they're like, wait a second, there's no way Chastain had more people than we did. We got to be there, and it becomes almost like a little competitive.
Well, it is, and that's why it's the Chastain Park Arts Festival. You know, you can't hold the Chastain Park Arts Festival in Marietta.
Yeah.
So the neighborhoods really own them. They really support them. And it's about community, and it's about using the spaces that are out there. Chastain Park is a perfect example. It's the largest park in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's larger than Piedmont Park.
Yeah, it's a pretty park, too.
One of the parks that we use is the Olmsted Linear Park, which is over off of Ponce de Leon.
Yeah.
Those are large, ginormous parks that are underutilized.
Yeah.
So we
Chastain is utilized, but Homestead Park is underutilized.
Well, it's utilized for
NYO with the huge kids. And there's those big playgrounds. I mean, it's busy when you go there. It's busy. But there's space that's unutilized, you mean?
Right, but and the park, the Conservancy has done an amazing job revitalizing and updating that park.
Yeah.
Rosa has done a great job just really updating it. The park looks amazing. I was there just the other day, and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But what we do is we find different parks in different areas that we feel that kind of meets who we are as a company and as a group, and also meets how the artists that we work with represent.
Yeah. So what are some of the newer ones? So we obviously, the older neighborhoods probably in town, but start getting to some of the more suburban or spreading out the city further. What are the most recent ones that you started?
Recent ones, Roswell. So we got, and Roswell, as a matter of fact, this weekend. So come out to Roswell. Roswell is at City Hall.
Wow.
And that was interesting. That was right in front of City Hall. They have a great park there.
Yep.
And a park that was never used.
Yeah.
We're out at Duluth, which is out in the town green.
Yeah.
Again, right in front of the City Hall. So parks that weren't typically, or spaces that weren't typically used. I remember when I met with Chris Ward with the city at Roswell. We were looking at different areas, and she said, "Hey, what about this area? We've never done anything here."
Oh my God.
And it's
like almost unheard of.
Well, and now it's one of our biggest events. We'll have 150 yards there this weekend.
I love it. And I think there's another thing that DC did a really good job of is every time that there was a train stop, this little pocket city grew around it, which was a public square, a public space, right? Right around the train station, there were these nice areas where people got together. And that's like, New York too. Even where my parents live in Long Island, people don't realize that the Long Island Railroad has 200 plus stops. And at every stop on the railroad, there's this little center that built around it because in the 1900s when they were building them, everyone had to go into Manhattan. So that's why they existed. So you got to lean into public transit, and it's a shame that we have not done a good job of it. But that's another part where you talked about people have to, that's how they get around in DC. They take the train, so they hop from pocket to pocket in 1 minute, one stop over.
Well, Bryant Park, the holiday markets in Bryant Park, New York, are a perfect example of that. Columbus Square, they're huge marketplaces around the metro spots.
Around the spots.
So what we've done is we find parks and areas that we are conducive for what we're doing. That you can spend the afternoon, that you can enjoy the walk and utilize the space. So,
all right, so let's get into the nitty gritty of it. So talk about how the company's set up. Talk about, is it just you? Do you have employees? Talk about, you have artists coming in. Are we talking, this is not for profit for communities? Talk a little bit about the makeup of the company.
Company is myself. It was founded by myself. Okay. But I do have a staff. I've got a staff of about 12. We're completely staff driven, which makes us unique in the sense that we don't have volunteers, but because of that, we're able to run efficiently.
Yeah, for sure.
Artists, we've got a database of like 15,000 artists that we work with.
Great.
But our shows typically have anywhere from 150 to 250 artists. Okay. We have shows on a regular basis, but again, we're popping around. So for the month of May, I've got a show every weekend.
Wow.
This weekend, I'll be in Roswell. Yeah. Next weekend, I'll be at Chastain. The weekend after that, I'll be in Duluth. The weekend after that, I'll be in Old Fourth Ward. Yeah. So we're popping around the Metro Atlanta market, and this allows the artists to basically have a job and create an income and hit different pockets of Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, and when I think art, the word that comes to mind is curation. So I'm sure as you do these shows, you learn about which artists to put with each other, which communities like what. I mean, I'm sure, like you said, Atlanta changes so quickly. But I think in marketing as a whole, this is the hottest topic right now, right? We feel obliged to just throw content out there, and people are not curating content. So do you become like the curator? Do you feel like you're in a museum kind of curating who's where and setting people up?
Yes, absolutely, because different neighborhoods will communicate or work better for different artists. Okay.
And that's something, they don't have like a bio and you read a bio. That's something you have an instinct from working with these people over time and having the best practices to see this stuff. Correct?
Well, we're actually looking at their work. So we're jurying their work. They send in slides and we look at their booths. There's some neighborhoods, if your booth is not spot on and perfect, they're going to walk right past you. Whereas other spaces, if it's more bohemian and cool, that's who you're going to attract.
Depending on the market. Bohemian cool probably works better in city than it does in Woodstock, right? There's probably places and ways to curate that way. Okay. Right. That's cool, though. So when we talk about artists, art is probably the most vague, broad word the world has ever seen. So give us an idea of some of these booths that are set up. Are we all doing paintings? Are people bringing food? What do we have? What do you have art-wise?
We like to say we have something for everyone. Okay. So we've got painters, we've got potters, we got photographers, we got jewelry makers. But then the unique thing about that is if I have 25 painters, everyone's going to be different. If I've got 10 potters, everyone's going to be different. So one of the things that I pride myself on is the fact is that we have something for everybody. Yeah. The thing about the arts festivals, people want to get out, they want to enjoy their time, and frankly, they may want to buy something. For sure. So I've got art regardless of your budget. If you want a $10,000 painting, you'll find it. But if you want something for $25, you'll find it. Nobody wants to go to an art show where they can't afford anything.
Yeah, for sure.
They want to find something. They're out there. Let's pick up something fun. For sure. If it's not for ourselves, maybe for a friend or family member. And that's one of the things I pride myself on, is that's exactly what we have.
Yeah, you're not looking for the investor, people who looking for art to think they think is going to make money. You're looking for people who it strikes them emotionally and they buy it.
Emotionally is exactly it. You're not buying that painting that's going to go over the sofa. Yeah. And trust me, I've got some of those artists who are amazing. You know, you're talking $15,000, $10,000 pieces of artwork, but the artists are the consumer is coming back on. They're seeing it on Saturday. They're coming back on Sunday to make the investment. Yeah, I've got some great friends, Mike and Melanie, who are amazing artists, and they make a fantastic living at what they're doing, and they're curated pieces. But I've also got other friends, Lexi, who's a jeweler, who does. Riley's got a piece for jewelry, and Riley's young. She's 21 years old, but she's able to make a living as a jeweler. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. And just thinking out loud, I feel like that's something that's missing from corporate America. Like, just, you know, I would love, you know, at Salomon Brothers to be able to put some local artists like that jewelry in the shelf and sell it for them, because I have people coming in for jewelry all the time. It's not going to compete with me to have somebody with local stuff. There's ways to lean into the localness in the community, and I think, look, I don't want to get too political here with tariffs, but the setup of this country now is to start trying to make our own stuff, and we're acting like it's not happening, but it's happening. There are artisans everywhere that are making things. Everything doesn't come via Amazon. We're just so pre-trained that we have to get the best price that we're looking these places. If you know where to look, you can find something always. I remember me and my wife, whenever we went abroad, and look, I'm not some global traveler, but I've been Bali and Lima, and I've been to South Africa. Every time we went somewhere, we would go to a local market. Right. We would find one piece. My wife would pick it, and then she would leave so I could beat the crap out of the guy on price, the guy or gal on price, and get it, because I like the haggling part of it, right? Like, yes, I'm prepared to walk away because this money is just right in my pocket. I'm buying something. Is it from you or this guy? Right. And you're like, okay, it is 1/100th the price. But that being said, it connected emotionally, so that's why I bought it.
No, I just got back from a trip from Paris, and it was the same thing. Yeah. I knew I was bringing something home that represented that trip, but it was how much I was going to spend and what did it represent. Yeah. And that's, again, what we're about. It's, you know, my Chastain Parks Festival is on Mother's Day, and, you know, they're out there picking something up for mom.
Love it. Love it.
My Chastain Fall Arts Festival, you know, I got spring and fall. You know, I know for that particular show in the fall, they're looking to get their houses ready for the holidays. That's how we curate the shows. Yeah, I love it. And again, I think that this stuff exists. I think it's not been curated. And look, it brings to a good point. So, unfortunately, watching the grander scheme of business and everything, it seems like when we talk about where money is being cut, it's from the arts and humanities. It's from DEI. You just see it. It's not a political statement. You see it happening. So, how do you, now all of a sudden you've built this business, you've built this community, you have access, you have reach, you have scale. Do you feel an obligation to make sure that that artwork continues to has an avenue to get in front of people? Yes, absolutely, because of that, because of the cuts. We're not corporate sponsored, but the fact is that you know, a lot of these artists are struggling. And one of the first places that people are going to think about cutting is where they're going to spend their extra money. They can go to a restaurant, they can share a dish. But when you're out walking an arts festival, it's like, how much are you going to spend? Are you going to buy that $10,000 painting? So it's very much a cautious...
discretionary, completely.
Right, exactly, where they're spending the money. So we have to be very careful about that.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're more likely to do it when they're in a space with other people around them and they're enjoying the vibe in the afternoon than they are just randomly going like online. I just, again, we've become this odd culture that we complain about all these things that we don't have, but they're all right in front of you.
But the other thing is we want to feel good. Yeah. We want to feel good. We want to have a good time. We want to get out. We don't want to be stuck in our houses. And doing that, that's where we're able to fill that need.
And I think I think if you look at these little micro pockets, and I think COVID forced a lot of these communities to become more insular, and like, because you really couldn't go places, that neighbors and your people became much more important. And I think if you can go with the vibe of, hey, yeah, this might cost 20% more than what you were thinking, but this is money that supports a community, right? You're supporting this community that has been taken away. I think there's still an avenue for people to support each other. I think it's just a little harder to bring it out of them nowadays.
It is, but it's about supporting community. It's about supporting local. It's about, supporting the artist, the person that's right there in front of you. You're not buying it online. But it's definitely going to hit the tariffs, and all of this are going to hit all of us regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're starting to see it now. Travel, like, I'm not saying Vegas is the creme de la creme, but Vegas is getting demolished right now because everyone who's been to Vegas knows that you got to have $5,000 in your pocket just to show up, between how expensive the food is and Nick's proclivity to drinking and gambling and whatever it is. You just got to be ready. So people are cutting back. They're just not going. So I think it's going to happen. I think international travel is still huge right now because I think people are still half revenge traveling, half they're mad that their friend went and they didn't get to go. But I just think that we're going to get to a point where when you talk about the arts and even just the, I don't want to sound like a douche, the finer things in life, but just the arts as a whole, you have to go do it. It has to be a balance to the other things you're doing in your life.
I agree. And but when you're looking at ticket prices, for instance, that's going to affect it because you don't have the corporate sponsors anymore because they're cutting those dollars back.
For sure.
So again, that's where we kind of come into play because it allows folks to get out and enjoy themselves and support the arts.
Yeah, and it's a shame, honestly. I grew up, in the city. So I have 3 younger brothers. So we live in New York, between Queens and Long Island, where I was. I think I've been to more museums in the past 6 months than 3 of them together have been in their whole lives. And it was because I had an aunt who would take me, and we would go to the MoMA, and we would go to the Met, just her and I together, and we would just wander the Met. And at first I was like, Zarin, what are you doing? I hate this. And then eventually you start picking up on things, and you just realize your attention isn't even required. Just wander around, just see what culture and absorbing things are like. And then I was lucky enough to study abroad in Italy when I was a junior in college, and I had a teacher. So I don't know if I don't remember if a guidance counselor told me this, but I didn't take any of my core classes until I studied abroad. So while everybody else is taking all this crazy stuff, I'm taking like Dante and like art, mysticism and magic in Renaissance Italy. And I ended up with this teacher who was actually an art curator at the Vatican.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, he only knew my name. He didn't know anyone else's name in the class. He called me Nick the Nightfly. I was an old radio DJ in Italy. But he taught me art. And I swear to God, there were 30 people in the room. He looked like he was talking to me. He saw I was into it, and he showed me the history of art. I got to go into the Vatican, and we got to go behind the scenes and see the catacombs and art, and something just lit in my head. And something just lit up. So I am a art guy. I take my kids to museums. My kids, even when he was 2 years old, it's not easy to take a 2-year-old to a museum, but we would do it. And we would just, I don't care how long you stay, you're wandering around. The High does a great job. They have the kids areas, even the SCAD Museum, and I want them to be exposed to it. I'm not going to make them draw. I'm not going to make them. I just want them to understand that in the world, these things exist for a reason, and these historic ones especially. Like, I love the High. I love American museums. The MoMA's great, but there's something different about ending up overseas. I was in London in February, and seeing the Raphael paintings, like they were in a chapel, is just otherworldly. Like, those paintings have been around for so freaking long. You just absorb culture, and I feel like we are not teaching our kids to do those things nowadays.
I agree. Like I said, I just got back from Paris, and someone was asking me about it, and I said, museum number 12 kind of looks like the same as museum number 2, but they have stuff that's centuries old, and we don't really have that here.
Yeah.
Struggling back to what I do in the sense of, our events, the community comes up. So for a weekend, where there's a green space, for instance, all of a sudden this whole community comes up, and it's all about art, and it's the livelihood and the energy, and that's what I like about what we do. And it goes right back to what you're talking about with the museums, where everyone's gathered together and everyone's just there kind of absorbing the energy.
Yeah.
So it's a full circle moment in that sense.
Yeah. And what I think I enjoy the most about museums is the perception, if you are not a museum person, is it's probably all the same type of people. Well, you've never been to a museum then. If you go to like the MoMA in New York, it is the biggest bunch of weirdos from the weirdest places, the international, kids, adults, people dressed preppy, people dressed like in the most streetwear you've ever seen. And I imagine it's something similar where you're walking around, and like if you have preconceived notions of who people buying art are, you probably every day are like, you're not even close. Like, it's usually the people who look the least like that vibe who have the nicest, most expensive paintings.
Again, I'm lucky to work with some great artists, and I see a painting that's $10,000, $12,000. I'm like, oh, are you going to sell that? And they do, because they're in their communities, they're in the neighborhoods, and these people are out. They're out buying, they're out shopping, they're out looking, and they're out supporting the arts and local.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think, again, we're
people.
American culture is odd, and I think, the thing about the Northeast, even D.C., there tends to be bigger ethnic populations from the cities directly. Like, my mother was born in Florence. Here, for what it's worth, yes, there's a lot of, it just seems to be I'm American, right? You just get a lot more of that. So I think those cultures come over from different places, and art is different everywhere you look, like what the mediums are. The old African art is completely different and distilled than what paintings are and what they used to use. So I think that's part of the culture, is just learning what art is to you, but it's also very personal, right? It's personal to what resonates with you, and it changes as you age also.
Right, what speaks to you at the moment.
At the moment. And there's great stories about it, and like, I personally, it sounds crazy, and my wife thinks I'm nuts, like, I love weapons. Like, I love going to these museums where they had the weapons that are like the halibrands and the stuff from the guard, and like, I went to the art of like samurais, and I'm like, done. Go. I'm here for 3 hours. I'm going to read every single thing.
You should visit Napoleon's tomb.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. And man, you just start learning about Napoleon. And I mean, the French Revolution, the whole world of liberalism we have was a microcosm of Napoleon. So again, that's what I'm talking about. And everyone has different, that's my thing with art. Like I like the history. Like my wife is a very avid Catholic and we go to church at Immaculate Heart of Mary, right? Yep. God bless it, but it looks like a ski chalet. Okay. I want to walk into a church and be like, how much messed up stuff has happened here.
Right.
Like that, like the Basilica in DC was one of my favorite places on earth, right? It's even pretty new, but you walk in, there's catacombs and tombs, and you're like, some messed up stuff went down here. That's what I like.
But you also want to walk in and be in awe.
Completely in awe.
You know, you want to walk in and you want to look up and can be completely in awe.
And you brought up such a good point. Nowadays, the social media revolution has cut our attention spans to nothing.
Absolutely.
So when you have a booth, even if it's not your artwork, you don't want to put out the best art. It's the thing that's most likely to grab attention. Right. And unfortunately, artists, if you're talking about musicians, if you're talking about painters, they are really good at what they do, but because of the advent of AI and algorithms, it is not how good you are at what you do, it's how good you are at telling people what you do. How much you play into, you don't want to put your paintings on Facebook or Google, you're going to be screwed because it's not going to help support you because they're not making money off of it. You have to come to terms with that. And in my experience, the creatives are the hardest people to get to come to terms with losing creative control, but you have to a certain extent.
Absolutely. I mean, creatives can be crazy if you want, but that's what the beauty of it. The fact is that they, they're always spinning. Their energy is always there. Yeah. But again, that's what I like about what I do. Yeah, it's cool. I have to imagine the community part is really good too, because if somebody has a booth next to somebody who's doing better than them, they can observe best practices and apply principles back to their booth. Hopefully observe. Yeah. Sometimes it's a give and take. Sometimes it's, they're antagonistic. Yeah. That's not fair that they're doing it. But a really good artist will pay attention to what someone else is doing and try and emulate that. Yeah. Each one of those booths that's their 10 by 10 gallery. That's their space. So they've got 100 square feet to sell what they're doing and to demonstrate that. So you're not talking about just, you're talking about 150 galleries, if you will, and 150 different artists, 150 different personalities, 100 different techniques. Yeah. So, how many different perceptions of what art is. Right. And how they see colors and how they see things coming together. So it's interesting in that fact. Yeah, no, I love it. I was recently in Savannah and I was struck. We were in Forsyth Park and my kids are a little bit older now, so they're not as much of a pain in the ass that I could actually walk around and explore. And it was just art central. You walk through Forsyth Park in Savannah and there's just people drawing and art everywhere you went, like rows of the whole row of both sides of the park. And it was refreshing to see it because that's not the first thing you think of when you think of Southern City, but because of SCAD, because of the history, it was just incredible to see how much art and people were out there. And everybody was different. Completely. Everybody was different. You're like, how can this person be completely different than this person? They're sitting right next to each other. But they all knew each other. Right. They were all slapping five. They would go talk to each other. It's a very nice feeling. And like, look, you still have to survive. So they're there for a reason. For sure. It's a community. For sure. For sure. Yeah, it was really cool. And again, I love the High is a wonderful place. But even the High sometimes this is going to sound wrong, whatever, I don't care. It feels like people sometimes go to the High because they feel they're supposed to go to the High. They don't go to absorb, they just kind of go because they feel like they have to be there. You can just tell they're more like social, they're like kind of running around. They're not really like, they're just there because they have to be. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen everywhere, but it's just, I think Atlanta, to be the cultural powerhouse to which it wants to be, has to embrace the arts a little more than it has. I agree with you on that one. I mean, we don't have the museums like New York does, or even DC. And look at what's happening with administration and cutting back at the Smithsonian. Oh my God. Step away. I was lucky enough that I got to go to the African American Museum. It was a crazy story. I was in DC. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a ticket. Didn't get a ticket, but screenshotted it because I thought someone. And I went to the guy up front and showed him the video. Like, dude, come on in. So I got to go see it, and it is otherworldly. First of all, you need 6 hours. I only had an hour and a half, but it is amazing. That's a brand new museum. They're already pulling artifacts out of it. Yeah, it's insane. I was there when they started building it. So I mean, I got to sit there and be part of the board and watch it come up from the ground up. But again, step back. Yeah. Step back. Yeah. But I do think that the arts in Atlanta, it could be better, could grow some more. But, I love, again, the fact that that's why I exist, because people want to be out.
Yeah. And again, I think art is a broad statement. So no one's saying it needs to be old paintings, right? Like, I love the Krog Street Tunnel. Like, you know, but again, you have to be a city person. You have to be a city person. Do you think anyone's driving down from Alpharetta to go to see the Krog Street Tunnel? They think they're going to get shot. I know. I love it. I love it. In action, it's a living paint. It's a living, breathing painting.
Yeah, it changes every week.
Yeah.
It changes every week.
I know. And it's part of the problems with Atlanta. You said that you're driving. That segmentation also makes it a little harder, right? There's probably, if you go up to Alpharetta and you go walk 1,000 people, when's the last time you were at the High? I mean, you might get 2 that were there in the past 6 months.
Yeah, because Alpharetta's not going to drive to Midtown. Again, we talked about that. Yeah. That's why I'm around.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the things, like with Centennial Yards and all this stuff that they're doing, I've met with them, I've consulted them. My guys, you have to understand, first to start, you have to give them a reason when they come down to stay 1 extra hour. Let's not start by thinking anyone from Alpharetta is going to come down because you built a $7 billion complex. Right? There has to be reason. So the World Cup's a great example, but understand the amount of people in Atlanta that are going to be able to afford to go to the World Cup is going to be minimal. It's going to be an international audience. What are you doing to draw those people down? What are you giving them that they can't get up there? Because Roswell's community has grown around giving anemones that you can get in Atlanta. That's why it's grown the way it has. So I just think, again, it's all part of this. And when I was meeting with the Centennial Yards people, I told them, like, guys, if you don't fix mass transit, this is all moot, because you just took away 6,000 parking spots. How are you getting people into mass transit also?
I mean, again, we talked about New York, D.C., Europe. They all have mass transit. That's another subject. But, you know, Atlanta's there. We're primed for growth. We're ready for it. And people want to be out. People do want to be out. And if it's done right, it'll happen.
Yeah. I just hope we lean into the arts and we stay away from the need of everything to be corporate sponsored, and it's just we have museums to go to museums, right? Like, I get why the world of Coca-Cola is there, but it bothers me. It bothers me that they're charging me to go be completely propaganda art advertised to. So it drives me a little crazy. You
don't want to try 100 different types of Coke?
Most of them are atrocious. I could try every one of them. So not ripping on you, Coca-Cola. Give some more diabetes to people. Just kidding. All right. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. And since I said diabetes, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. We're finishing up our conversation with Randall Fox. We've covered a lot. I've said a lot of dirty words. I said diabetes for some weird reason. But we're gonna finish this up. I think, you know, we've talked about preserving the arts. We've talked about going with community, but I think it's important to just double down on this, right? We talked about funding being cut. We talked about the livelihood of these artists being threatened. Without these things like you do, these artists are just drawers. They're just painters because they don't have an avenue to sell their goods to make a living, right? And that is the definition of being professional, is an avenue to sell and to make money. So, so one of my concerns is it's twofold. One, if we take money out of the arts and humanities, we have a generation of people that are coming up that are not exposed to them, which means they won't be the future artists. So that's the first part. The second part is that we have a generation of people who found out that they can't make money off of them, so they leave the realm. So what does that open yourself up to? Unfortunately, nowadays, AI taking over, and all of our artwork is 3D generated. I mean, this has happened in music, right? Do you know how many people nowadays made it famous because how could they play guitar? Almost nobody. Do you want to know how they make music nowadays? They put anodes on your head, they play little patterns, and whatever's going to solicit a response from your brain, that's how they make music nowadays. You see it happening. Now, the good news is, I also think that people get to a point where they just revolt against that, and then some of the best art comes out of that point. So where do you see things? How important is this for the sake of art for the world and for right now, or am I just being completely over-exaggeratory here?
Well, I think there's going to be 2 different types of art. But, I mean, in a sense, people are creative. So I think that, you know, in that creative sense of it, you know, people are going to continue doing that sense. Yeah. You know, we talk about the economy, we talk about AI. You know, people are going to look for other ways to make money. For sure. So I think, you know, for what I do and for what the artists do, they're going to be creative, and they're going to look for ways to take time to do things. So I think for what we do, it's still going to be around. I think what you have to look at is how it's going to integrate. You know, a painter is still going to be a painter. It's just a question of how is their work integrated with the AI, and how can they separate it so that they're able to sell it. Yeah, or keep it separate so they own the intellectual property, so someone's just not ripping them off. I mean, that's the biggest problem right now is you're literally, AI's making painting. It's like, make this an impressionist style. Well, there's thousands of impressions out there that style is intellectual property of them that you were scraping off of to make something new. There's no protections. Well, but are we teaching that in the schools anymore? Are they learning what that is? I mean, what the Renaissance art.
My kids are. I mean, I can only speak for myself, and my kids, I was not an artist growing up. I didn't even draw. Like, my kids are, they love it.
I can't do a stick figure.
They love doing it. And because I have a boy and a girl, and they're close in age, the girl did it, so now the boy's like, I'm going to be better than you, which I lean into. I'm like, yeah, daddy's going to put the best one on the fridge. Go. Right? You're not supposed to do that, but you know what? That's the only way you get better is by being competitive.
Right, but I think people are creative in a sense.
Yeah.
And they look for ways to fill their time, or they look for hobbies.
For sure.
Whether it's a leather worker, or a painter, or a potter. So I think that will always be around because, crafts and trades work have always been around for centuries.
Yeah, for sure.
Since the beginning. It's just how it's integrated.
Yeah.
I think AI is going to, digitally, how it's going to affect the arts. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of museums. The last one, where they're modern art museums, and they always have these digital art displays.
Right.
And like, it's always with mixed emotion. I walk in, like, there's a lot of TV screens and neon lights, and like, conceptually I get it, but I'm not there yet. I'm like, guys, right? The same museum has a 2,000-year-old painting. Is this art? I mean, what's going on here? And like, I lean into it. I understand conceptually, but I'm not there yet. But that being said, as generations pass, that becomes the new form of art. Right? Modern art started in what? Like the say 1800s that modern art started?
Well, but look at Jackson Pollock and look at Mona Lisa. You're talking two different extremes. So, you know.
And extremes, I'm not saying they're anywhere near equal popularity, but most people in the world know Jackson Pollock is.
Right, but is everyone going to appreciate who he is?
I think as you age and all of a sudden some of the things that he does, like a great example, and I'm not saying Pollock and Warhol are the same thing, but when you're in the 1970s, a Campbell's soup can is nothing, but now you look back, the nostalgia makes it like, oh, that's pretty cool, I can't believe that. Marilyn Monroe in that moment was nothing, but now all of a sudden you look back. So I think time helps change what art is also.
Right, and people are creative, bottom line.
Agreed.
Regardless of where we're at, they're creative.
You see me do this, hosting a podcast from nothing. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm an artist, but it ain't easy to do. Most people can't do it.
You're good at what you do.
Most people can't do it, but the joke is that why did I do it? So here's part of the problem. When someone asks why you do this, okay, the only thing I said is, first off, I'm going to do 150 episodes. Like, what do you mean? I go, well, how would I know if I'm good at it? How would I know if I'm worth a damn if I don't do it enough times to be good? I think people believe nowadays, because of the instant gratification, that you're going to do something, be great at it, and make $1 million.
I agree with you on that one. Social media and instant gratification, everything's instant, everything's right away. I think you're right in that sense that it has changed in that scope. But again, you go back to creative, and the thing is they're trying to get that energy out of their brain, and
it has to manifest itself some way, because otherwise you're going to go crazy if you don't have a hobby or a creative bone in you. And look, creativity manifests itself so many ways. Like, people just like to read, and that's in its own form of creativity, reading old books and piecing things together. So I agree, and then look, I think human nature is an amazing thing, and I think every time someone counts us as a society of people out, we pivot the other way.
Well, history repeats itself.
Always.
There we go.
Always. Always. Well, let's hope that we are not heading for a medieval time, dark ages, and let's hope that we go refine the hermetic writings of ancient Greece and we enter a new renaissance where we lean into these things. Because right now, my concern is that when capitalism, which is the current religion, runs everything and is the thing that everyone works towards, the arts and humanities suffer. And what I want to see is more leaning into it and people being able to express themselves, and art done the right way brings people together, doesn't drive them apart.
I think people are going to lean into it. I think they're going to need that outlet.
Good. Well, I love it. Well, we're going to end on a positive note. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Randall, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Tell them where to find Atlanta Foundation for Public Spaces. Talk about the upcoming events. This will probably air June, so give them an idea of what will be coming up and around the month of June.
We got Piedmont Park Arts Festival in August.
Awesome.
That'll be our big one in August. You can always find us at AFFAppleFrankPaulSam.com. We got a great.
That sounds like a boy band.
I know, doesn't it? We got a great marketing team. Karen West. You can Google us. You can find us anywhere. If you're looking for an arts festival, you can. She's got us covered.
That's awesome. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll catch you next week.